we forget. We as individuals, we as society, and we as the kind of collective craft forget stuff. Especially as we move on and things start ramping up information, technology, content creators. We just got a constant flow of new information. A lot of times we just flat forget. I'm guilty of that. Sort of. Today I want to talk about kind of a step that in doing a production run of mallets, I did a whole bunch, I shipped them all out, and now I'm creating some backstock. This whole production run didn't sell as many as I thought, so I'm going to have a lot of backstock, but at least I wanted to do this production run for a year or two. Beside the point. Anyways, in doing this production run, I've been doing a lot of burnishing, okay? I want to get a really good, solid finish without a film or anything like that on these mallets. So I've been burnishing them. And maybe it's just the fact that I started doing a bunch of them back after back. I started seeing minute differences, and that caused me to do a little deep dive into burnishing. And I talked about this, maybe a year or two ago in a tips video, and everything I did in that video was correct, but I'm now realizing I didn't take it far enough. And in fact, a lot of the videos that I grew up learning about woodworking and the craft and how people did stuff in this burnishing aspect, in the sanding aspect, I don't think they took it far enough either. Let me show you. Okay, so I'm going to use this turning piece. It's just a cylinder as an example and as a way to explain it for all kinds of woodworking, whether you're spoon carving, flat working, and stuff like that. We're going to cover it all, but this is the example, the experiment I'm doing there. I planed this with a skew, got it nice and smooth, no tear out, stuff like that. I power sanded it very briefly with 180 grit, just to get everything smooth, everything like that. Then I went through, 180, 220, 320, and 400, and I put brand new sandpaper on the pad. So this is as good a sanding job as I can do. I very rarely ever take any woodworking above 400 myself. I really don't see too much reason why. That is equivalent to what they used to do in the old days before they even had sandpaper. They used to use shark skin, cottontails. They had different abrasives that they could take it up to somewhat close to this level. And then they would burnish. And you see it all the time. Even in today, people say, pick up a handful of your shavings, turn your lathe on, and, wipe it down. Okay? Just like this. Now, unfortunately, with the lathe, turning this cylinder, I'm actually going sideways against the grain. But if you see a cabinet maker or something like that, they would take the shavings and then they would go specifically with the grain because you are going to induce some scratches with this. Theoretically, this is finer than the 400 grit abrasive, plus you are burnishing. So I'm going this way with the lathe. I'm now going to stop it. I'm going to turn it the other way, and I'm going to go the other way. Okay, just like that. Coming across with the shavings. Now here's the part we forgot. What I just did, what the books are explaining, what a lot of other creators are saying is this is a finer grit, and whether you're going with the grain on a flat piece or you're on a lathe and you turn one way, you reverse it, you turn the other way, you're basically treating it like an abrasive. And it's taking those fibers and it's pushing it one way and then the other way and kind of back and forth until they break off and you get a nice smooth thing. A lot of us will spray it down with either alcohol or water to raise whatever fibers up, and then we do it again to knock it off. So you don't have any fibers that are coming out. Again, we're treating it as an abrasive. That's perfectly fine. That's what they did in the old days too. But they took it a step farther. And that's where I think a lot of us have forgotten the why we did this with something that had a lot of friction to it. Because we need the heat. It's the heat that gets us the really cool finish. Come take a close look. Okay, I went and got my good flashlight so we can get cool color. Okay, can you see the light reflecting off of it? Can you see? It's a kind of a semi-gloss finish with no finish whatsoever. Now you might see some kind of wear scratches coming this way, that way. That's because we are going around in a circle and I'm going across sideways to the grain with another abrasive. That's just the nature of doing it on a lathe, but if you were doing it with the grain, like on the flat stuff, you wouldn't even see that kind of stuff. That is very, very pretty. But that's just using the abrasive aspect of burnishing. The part we've forgotten about is heat. So I'm going to rotate quickly. I'm going to take this blank right here. I'm going to divide it up into roughly 3 parts. On this side, close to the headstock, I'm going to resand it with 400 grit, the best I have. Turn on dust collector. Reverse it. And reverse it again. So that's as good as I can do with sandpaper. I now have the burnish section where you saw the amount of time. I didn't cut anything out. I just sat there with the shavings. I went back and forth. Now, I'm getting away from using shavings, especially on these things, going back to what I used to do with a piece of leather. And, 5 years ago, I came out with a little commercial selling my version of a coaster or stuff like that as a fundraiser, and a lot of y'all laughed at me at that coaster, at that thing, because I called it a multi-function coaster, and I showed you all the different things I do in my shop with little things like that. A lot of it were jokes, but a lot of it, I think y'all saw through, were actual applications of having a little piece of leather. So I'm going to do that one because this takes away the abrasive nature of this right here. And I'm going to take that 400 and on the side of the third that's closest to the tailstock, I'm once again going to sand it. You know what? While editing, I kind of decided I ought to put that 90-second commercial right here. Because, those coasters help subsidize this stuff. So, y'all now have to endure it.
Are you a professional wannabe woodworker? Do you also enjoy a nice, cold, frosty beverage in your shop? Then you need to get yourself a genuine, original, non-patentable, multi-function leather workshop coaster from Worth the Effort Woodworking.
I'm okay.
Does the idea of venturing all the way to the other side of your workbench to retrieve your sharpening stroke leave you mentally exhausted? Then you need a workshop coaster. Do you have a shop cat? Then you need a workshop coaster. Are you constantly stabilizing boards on your workbench? Bandsaw, thickness planer set, or miter saw? Then you need a workshop coaster. Would your workshop benefit from a sternum pad, clamp pad, dog repeller, gouge hone, tracing jig, burnishing pad, burr remover, kid repellent, or spouse distractor? Or do you just need proof to all your woodworking buddies that you know what you are doing in the workshop? Then you need to get your own Texas-grown, Texas-made, genuine, original, non-patentable, multi-function leather workstroke coaster from Worth the Effort Woodworking, while supplies last.
So, what I have right now is The third, close to the headstock, is perfectly sanded. The middle section is how everybody has taught me, both in books and online, how we burnish today. Okay. But when I've been doing these mallets, because it's been repetitious, I've kind of seen something. It's when I started getting it too hot for me to do it with these, I reverted back to a thing I used to do a long time ago. I would use leather. In fact, I used to have a little strap that I would just hold it like that to do stuff. And it gave me good results, but I never really understood why. And even in the video I did, a year ago, I kind of couldn't quite figure out how to explain it. I now know how, because I saw a video, one of those trade videos back in the 30s, or they were black and white videos where they were showing people how to do it. And the old guys, they would sand stuff, and then they would get their shavings, and they didn't burnish like we do. Dainty little thing, just rubbing it back and forth, or doing our arms. No, they grabbed a handful, they got it on top, and they were forcing it, and they were working a lot of time because they were trying to create heat. They weren't worried about the abrasive aspect of it, of moving the fibers back and forth. That would take care of itself. Their goal was to create heat. And if you think about it, when we steam bend wood, we kind of put it in there, steams at 212 degrees. It kind of melts the lignin between the fibers of the cells so that those cells can slip. So lignin is the glue in between the straws of wood. And if you can kind of get it softened, those fibers can slide, and that's how we can bend wood. And then when they recool, they reharden up, and they hold those fibers in there. So that's how you can get the wood to stay a specific shape. Well, lignin, depends on what species of wood, they say it polymerizes, but the easiest way I know to explain it is it melts. It's not technically melting, but function-wise, it melts on around 150 to 170 degrees, okay? So by using the leather, I was basically creating a heat pad between my skin and stuff like that, so I could get it really hot without burning my skin. The other thing about leather was in turning, because I'm going across a grain, it wasn't leaving those little pressure grooves like there. So I started using this, and after about 20 mallets, this is all I've been doing, and even people that have been getting mallets in the mail have been complaining that they're too pretty to use because the finish is really, really good on them. So I've perfectly sanded, burnished the way everyone's been doing it. Now we're going to burnish from 400 grit sanded on this side using leather, and I'm going to put some heat in it. So here we go. Sanded, burnish, resanded. Now we're going to add some heat. I got my little leather coaster, so we're going to turn the speed up to, I'm going to say it's a medium. I'm just going to sit here and work it back and forth. And I'm adding heat. Now, I cannot feel any heat in my fingers at all right now. But with just that amount, that's about as long as I can hold my finger on that. I was going this way, I'm going to reverse it, just like if I was going back and forth with the grain, like those old guys. And I'm putting enough pressure that you can see my fingernails are kind of turning down a little bit. And now I'm going to reverse it again. And as you can see, it doesn't do much to the leather itself. It doesn't even polish it. This is just raw leather. There's no finish on it that I know of. Just veg tan leather. And now after all that, the temperature of the wood, that's about all I can hold it down. Okay? So that tells me that's probably between 150 and 170. Though the temperature doesn't go very far in it. It's just a surface temperature. Wood doesn't conduct very much, and that's all I'm worrying about. Okay? So just wipe that down and let's take a look at it. So I'm trying to set the focus right there, which is an area I didn't burnish. Low sanding right here. And you can tell with my good quality light that the normal burnishing is a little bit shinier. But can you tell? I mean, how far in can I zoom? On this section right here, I can see the individual pores. You can see the light reflecting around the individual pores right here. But look over here. That is dead flat. You don't see the pores anymore. And granted, maple doesn't have huge pores, but you know, the end of it's just smoother. It's a little bit flatter, not as shiny, but the surface is a lot smoother. That lignin has actually polymerized, it's kind of gotten soft, wet, and spread out to fill those little voids in the wood. That is now a better substrate for whatever kind of traditional finish you're using. Oils, waxes, that kind of stuff. Now, if you're using a film finish that needs something to grip on, this is not good because it's actually too smooth for a lot of those to grab onto. Plus the fact that because you kind of melted it and it re-solidified evenly, this is a little bit harder than that, according to what the science research I've found out there. So all around, it's the heat that in burnishing that's giving us a benefit. The abrasive acid makes it shiny, but we're going to be doing something else to it anyways, with oils or waxes. So it's the better substrate that the heat gives you that gives you the benefit. Let's add a little oil and see the difference, because what I found is that the difference between the sanded and the burnished of how the oil lays, I'm using less oil and it's a little bit shinier. But the difference between the burnished and the heat burnished, that's kind of cool. I've got a little oil right here. This is pretty saturated, so come over. And also that polymerization, the plasticizing of that lignin, it will gather up the microscopic sawdust to help fill those fibers. It kind of acts as a filler, and that's why you see less of the grain. So, again, this is 400 grit as best I could do with sandpaper. And it's just taking a lot more oil before it gets kind of that shiny look that I need. That tells me that, sorry, the camera fell. That shiny look, it's taking 2 drops to get that shiny look. That tells me that it's not absorbing any more oil. So come back over here, 1 drop on this section, and you see almost instantly. In order to get the shininess, it just doesn't take as much oil. And now the other side, the heat side. 1 drop, and it's even more resistant. So now I take a dry portion of the rag, I turn up thing, and I add heat to polymerize the oil, but not nearly the same amount of heat that I used with the leather. And now let's look at the finish. There's the sanded side. There's the burnished area. And then there's the heat burnished area. That's probably the glossiest, but that is markedly smoother feeling. And what's cool is it just looks smoother. So I start buffing and polishing that. This comes out so much better than this. So to bring it back to where we started, I think we've forgotten that the purpose of burnishing is more than just the final grit. You know, a brown paper bag burnishing, it's more than just getting the finest grit possible. It's to add heat, to melt that top layer of lignin so that it fills and smooth. And whenever you're doing that with that leather, you can actually feel it get a little bit grippy when it starts to get really hot. And I'm assuming that's the lignin kind of rubberizing and then kind of being mushed around. So, we forget stuff. We forget a lot of times the why we're doing stuff. And it took me playing around with the mouse, doing them over and over and over, and then kind of questioning why, and then going online and seeing the old videos of them burnishing things, and looking at the science papers of it, talking about steam bending and and how the lignin moves around, and how when you add heat, you can kind of mush it like soft rubber. Try it out. And personally, try it out with a piece of leather. I hope you buy one of our coasters, but any kind of scrap leather will work as long as it doesn't have any kind of dyes or anything on it. You can get that stuff really, really hot, and use the outside skin side, not the kind of rougher interior side. I did find in experimenting with it that kind of picks up sawdust, and that sawdust acts like abrasive, and you get those lines that I don't like. It's a soft side. Wipe it on your shirt to make sure there's no sawdust on it, and then really get after it. I hope you enjoyed this, picked up a few tips and tricks. And remember, it's always worth the effort to learn, as I just did, create stuff, and share it with others. For today's bonus, I want to talk about Peter Galper. He really is one of the better educators in this generation of woodworkers. He kind of specializes in chair making, and I'm including him here because he does a lot of steam bending, which kind of falls in this melting the lignin aspect that we covered in this video. Go check it out. You'll enjoy it.